Josh Lipton is our VP of Operations of the Rentals Network. He brings a ton of experience and he oversees the growth and operations of all things rentals, including Rent Faster as well, which is obviously huge on the western side of Canada. He does a really great job implementing data-driven strategies, and he guides our direction really, really strongly. He's a great friend, a great mentor, and we're really lucky to have him today. So big warm round of applause for our next guest, Josh Lipton.
So today I'm going to be talking about the ILS trends, and I'm a big believer that the way that you have to tell this story is if you want to know where ILSs are going, you have to first look at where we came from, and that'll lead us to today, and then we can follow that trend into the future. So that's really where I'm going to go. So first I'm going to kind of lay the background into where ILSs came from, how they developed, and how kind of the internet search traffic kind of came through. Some background. So over time, we did have an evolution in the growth of online digital listing sites and digital traffic. Previously people were listing in newspapers, and there were different ways that people found out about rentals, walking by apartments. But with the growth of the internet came more and more use of digital first options. And I want to talk about some important inflection points here that really changed how people use the internet to search for rentals. The first one is in 2013. This is actually the first time that Facebook's mobile traffic overtook desktop. And to me, this is an important shift because this is the beginning of the shift to the mobile first era. We all have smartphones on us, basically 24/7 within arm's reach. We sleep right beside them. And this is really the first time that you could have the internet on you all the time. An important inflection point, and we can actually see on this chart, which is taken from Google Trends, that we did actually see a pretty big uptick in rental demand in the following years. And again, a big part of that is the shift from desktop where you're searching at home. Maybe you forget what was the name of that apartment. Now you walk by an apartment, you want to look it up, you can just search it right there. So that was a really important point. The next interesting one was in 2016. After Donald Trump won the U.S. election, we actually did see a temporary spike in demand traffic. A lot of Americans looking to move to Canada. So I find that always an interesting little data point. And it kind of peaked shortly after there, around 2018. And you can see after that, we do have some other important points. So in 2020, we saw a pretty steep decline temporarily as COVID lockdowns happened. People didn't want to move. But they soon got restless, and that soon bounced back up as people looked for more space and different places to live. And that actually continued along with inflation. They both rose in unison. People were looking to move, and inflation peaked around 8%. And shortly after that, rental demand started to drop. And then you can see in the chart, that last yellow dot, the bank rates peaked at 5.25%, and as they started cutting, demand dropped, and we've seen that along with turnover, that's also dropped. So again, this is Google search trends, but this is kind of over a 10, 15, 20-year history, just how it's kind of evolved. So those are some important trends. When we're talking about digital sources, there's three primary sources of that people are looking at. We're talking classified sites, so Craigslist, used. We're talking internet listing sites, that could be Rentals.ca or Zumper, and owner/management sites. So we have some examples, all of your sites as well, or property sites. So those are the three that we're talking about typically. So let's start with classifieds, because to start, those were some of the biggest sites. Early internet classifieds really dominated, and they have some obvious benefits and some obvious challenges. So first of all, they have very large audiences, extremely large. Tons of people use them. So that's great. There are free tiers available. You can obviously post for free, and they do have very strong regional presence. So those are some really big advantages. There are some challenges though. That is why we've seen kind of trends away from classifieds. So some of the challenges are there's limited search capacity. They don't always have the same ability to filter by different regions or amenities or combinations of filters. They're not real estate focused. As mentioned, the advantage of it's a large audience, but the flip side is they're not necessarily there for real estate. They could be looking for a used washing machine a stroll or whatever, and they just happen to come across your stuff. So, and the last thing is the variable listing quality. Some of these listings are not always complete. They don't have all the data. They're not always as high quality. And we've also seen, and this will be a trend I talk about later, is some fraudulent listings. There is a higher risk of fraud on these sites because you just don't know who's on the other side of this. And so these are some of the main challenges that we see with classifieds. As mentioned, classifieds started with tons of traffic, so much of it. But over time, they've shed their volume to other, what we call vertical listing sites. And so Craigslist, had so much traffic, but over time, people stopped searching for cars there and they've gone over to other sites like Autotrader.ca. They stopped doing short-term rentals and they've moved over to Airbnb, which has stolen a ton of their traffic. People stopped selling tickets on there and now they're StubHub. They stopped finding dates and personals, like Hinge now. Freelance workers, they've moved over to Fiverr and TaskRabbit, and even job seekers. And so a study actually estimated that over $250 billion in value has shifted from classifieds to vertical sites that have just taken the traffic that was on Craigslist and other classifieds, and they've created their own sites. And the main reason is exactly what we talked about. It's great that they have these giant general audiences, but they're not specific to that vertical. They're not specific to cars. And so if you want a car, you want to have the specific, is it this model or this ship? You want the site that has the features specific to you. And it's the exact same way with rentals. You want to search the way you search. So just as some example around the trends around classified versus listing sites, we have here, this is an index. So starting in 2012, compared to then where traffic is today, you can see that over time, kind of searches on Google for apartments for rent and Craigslist apartments, they both rose in unison up until around 2016, and then they started diverting. And Craigslist searches since then have gone down 82%, and searches for Craigslist apartments, again, this is Google searches, are down since then 40%, while apartments for rent overall still up. You can see down in the last few years, but still up significantly over time. And again, this is because people are not going to Craigslist as much it just doesn't offer the same feature set. So we are seeing kind of a divergence as classifieds begin to lose that traffic to vertical sites. So the other trend we're seeing, again, big trends, is consolidation. Whenever I'm looking to see a roadmap, I look to our neighbors to the south, to the US, for business trends, and we can see there's just been a ton of consolidation. And we see the same thing here. So just as an example, Expedia Group owns all these brands. I'm not going to read them out, but just a ton of different brands all consolidate into one company. Same with Marriott in hotels and even in housing search. You can see CoStar. They own all these different apartment listing and rental listing sites. So consolidation is a common trend that we're seeing, and it was popular because there are so many different listing sites, and it's hard for each of them to carve out their own niche and build and grow and invest in the features that they want to build and offer to the clients. And so consolidation is necessary. And we have seen that here in Canada as well, as the Rentals.ca Infinity Network launched this past year, and that is bringing together 8 extraordinarily strong brands into one network. And again, it does offer for users a more consistent experience, and for clients, it offers, again, easier to list across all of them. It offers cost efficiency, and it offers the ability for the network to reinvest into better products, because instead of managing 8 different sites, it's now one. So that is a trend that we're seeing. So that's kind of the background behind listing sites and online traffic. Where we stand today. So let's start with rents across BC. So over the last 5 years, rents on 1 bedrooms have gone up 37%, and rents on 2 bedrooms have gone up 29%. Now we know rents have gone up. Again, the reason why 1 bedrooms have gone up more is because people are starting to feel squeezed. They need to find more affordable places, and so you're seeing more and more demand for smaller and more affordable units, because that's what people can afford. However, this rental increase has also led to a massive drop in turnover. We've seen this data from CMHC that turnover rates in Vancouver have dropped 40% over the last 5 years. And that's because when the price goes up, people now feel they're locked in. They don't want to move. They feel like, you know what, now I'm rent controlled. I'll stick it out. If I leave, I'm going to face market rents. Do I really want to do that? And so we've seen that these rising prices have led to low turnover. And this kind of creates a vicious cycle. So we can see rental rates have risen. Again, they've gone up 37%. That leads to renters moving less again. Turnover rates down 40%. That leads to fewer available units. And that worsens the search demand trend. Again, we've seen, I showed that first one, search demand drops. That's people searching on Google for apartments and similar search terms has dropped 27%. So this creates this vicious cycle where people aren't moving, and because they aren't moving, they're not looking. That means fewer rents, fewer available units. That means higher prices on the ones that are around. So kind of this vicious cycle that we're struggling to get out of. Again, another data point just showing kind of this differentiation. Again, from Google Trends, apartments for rent, that search over time, it's down 15% over time, and you can see it's down pretty significantly in the last 2 years. But searches for studio apartments for rent and one-bedroom apartments for rent in Google is actually nearly flat. It is down a little bit of lately, but again, this talks about how people just are looking for smaller, more affordable units. It's what they can afford. And again, this is kind of a byproduct of the extraordinary price increases we've seen over the last 5 years. And we're seeing this as well on the rentals network side. So when you actually look at the individual filters, we're seeing people look for bachelor and one-bedroom units about 16% more than they used to a year ago. And 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms are getting searched about 15% less. The other interesting one I find is that people are searching for utilities included less. I can't explain why. I think it has to do with the price as well, but you'd think you'd actually want utilities included since it kind of makes it cheaper, but we're actually seeing that down 29%, which I found very interesting. Some other interesting changes that we're seeing are people are searching for air conditioning significantly more. Balconies up 72% searches. Again, this is year over year, last 90 days in Vancouver versus the same time last year. Dishwashers up a ton, and same with laundry. That's both in-suite laundry and laundry facilities. I actually believe, I don't want to misquote it, but I think in-suite laundry was up over 200%, even more so than just laundry general terms. And I don't have an explanation for these, but I have some theories. And so one is that users are becoming more sophisticated. Going back to the classified things, with the listing sites, we have very powerful filtering. And so as users become more sophisticated, they're able to use more filters and more complicated filtering queries to get exactly what they're looking for. Another theory, again, not saying this is the explanation, I'd love to hear if you guys also have theories, is that if they know they're going to be in a unit for longer because they're saying, you know what, I don't want to look again in 2, 3 years because rent's just going to keep going up. They're looking to make sure that they have all the amenities they want because, you know, maybe you're like, I need something now. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'll move again in a year. Now they're like, no, I want to find everything. And the last theory again is that people are moving in with roommates or with someone else. And so they say, you know, if we're all going in together, let's get the tops, let's get in-suite laundry, let's get dishwasher, let's get a balcony. I also need some space and away from you. And with more people living there, maybe more AC. The other trend that we're seeing again, organic search demand, so searches on Google for apartments and rental related terms is down 27% year over year. While leads, I will note, these are track leads to the Rentsync platform, are down 21. So we are seeing leads also fall in line with that trend, though not as much. And again, I think this is because the listing sites are gaining market share. It's kind of somewhat of a shrinking pie in the last year in that there's fewer renters to go around that are searching, but the listing sites are gaining a percentage of that pie from classifieds and from other sources. And so that's why they dropped less than search demand. But this is another interesting trend. Again, listing sites are gaining market share overall, even if the pie is slightly shrinking over time. I will set the stage for this one. This is how much of organic search share is going around. So this is taken from a site, Ahrefs. It's publicly available. People can search. These are basically for search terms related to renting in Vancouver. So a number of search terms such as one-bedroom apartments in Vancouver, affordable bedroom apartments, stuff like that. So we collected the top 1,000 search terms, and we looked at those search terms. And on Google, if you're the first ranked term, on average, you get about 30% of the clicks. The second, about 20. The third, I think, is about 13. Fourth, 8. Keeps going down. Basically, if you're in the top 3, you're going to get a big percentage. Basically, we use that to calculate the expected traffic rates. And that expected traffic rate then turns into kind of a market share. So if you're number 1 on all the terms, you're going to get a really high percentage. If you're 10th, you're going to get a very low percentage. So based on that, we looked at what percentage of the market each of the different sites made up in Vancouver. And, number 1 in Vancouver was Rentals.ca. And then I will note that when you combine all the sites in the Rentals.ca Infinity network, they represent 46% of all search traffic. And I do want to clarify this is search traffic, so this does not include people going direct to a site. So, if it is your own sites, that's not going to be included here. This is only Google search traffic from Ahrefs. After that, it was all owner and property management sites. So again, there was a lot of that demand, people searching for your specific apartments and apartments in specific regions. Then there was the CoStar network of sites, Craigslist, and then there was a number of other sites as well. Again, it was interesting, but there is kind of some fragmentation in the market. But I think it goes back to what Ali said in the last one, which is that, listing sites, if your own site makes up about 15%, it does mean that the listing sites are necessary. They are a requirement for either a lease up or even a stabilized. They really should be the first source that you look for. They make up such a huge percentage of search demand, which is where, again, most people start their search on Google. The other trend, and I said I'd get back to it, is safety and security. So this is based on the Better Business Bureau. So there was a 31% increase in susceptibility to rental scams in 2023 versus 2019. That means that people were much more likely to get, and a study also showed that 40% of renters are likely to encounter at least one fraudulent listing during their search. Again, this is happening because people are feeling desperate. People are saying, I need a place to rent. Scammers out there list a unit at a price that looks too good to be true. I would tell people if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. But these people are desperate. They need a place. And so they fall victim, unfortunately, to a scam. So that has been on the rise as rental rates have increased. And I will say that I can tell you that on Rentals.ca, we are trying to improve that and work towards reducing scams and making it easier for users to report fraudulent listings, to catch them before they happen. We've introduced a verified listings program where people who syndicate through verified sources, such as Rentsync, get a verified tag. This gives users more information that these are verified properties that we have more faith in, and so you can feel strongly that these are, that you're not going to have an issue, and so you should trust these users more. And we're continuing to work on other improvements, especially around AI, to try and detect when there's fraudulent users either on the landlord or the renter side. So that is another important trend we're seeing that I think is another reason why classifieds are kind of losing it. So based on all of that, where do we see the future of listing sites headed? So the first thing that we're adding to some of the listing sites, and I'm really excited about this, is impression data. So I find it interesting. For the longest time, we said, when early listing sites came out, I know a lot of them said, oh, look how many impressions you got. Look how many views you got. And then we started saying, well, don't look at that. It doesn't matter how many impressions you got. You care about leads. If you get 1 million impressions, but you just get 1 lead, do you really care about the listing site? But now we've kind of reversed trend. We do want leads. Leads are still the most important metric from that standpoint on a listing site. But the leads in comparison to the impressions can tell a really interesting story. So that's why I'm so excited about the fact that we can now start seeing impression data, which is coming soon to Rentsync reporting. Because you'll have impressions and leads, you can now get lead conversions. That's what percentage of people who saw your listing on a listing site actually submit a lead. And that can tell you a really important thing about the price value proposition, or how the market, how renters see your property, how they see your brand, how they see the price you've offered, how they see the amenities, the location, the entire value proposition versus the price you're offering. And that tells a really interesting story. So just as an example here, we have Conversion rate, again, this is just an example on 2-bedroom apartment properties in Vancouver. So one, the rental rate is $39.50 and the other is much cheaper. And so you can see one has a very different conversion rate than the other. One has an 8% conversion rate, one has a 13%. Now, what are the reasons? Could be that the price is just too high on property A, could be that the price is fine, but maybe the location's not as good. And so again, the value isn't as good. Or could be maybe you're just not doing a good job of showing what is great about the property, whether it's pad photos, not great virtual tours, and vice versa on the other side. It could be a great value, it could be very affordable, could have great media, such as virtual tours, and really help the user understand and feel like they're living there. And so it really helps, the conversion rate helps you show the expectation of how the market, again, sees your price value. Now, I do want to note that there are some important things here to keep in mind. And that is that you are not trying to optimize conversion. You don't always want a very high conversion rate. So that's one. And the other thing is that conversion rate is determined by a number of different factors. So just an example, we looked at conversion rate in different cities, and I found that it was highly correlated to the population and the listing density. And what I mean by that is if you're in Vancouver, there's a bunch of different properties you're competing with. So your conversion rate is going to be lower because if they don't like yours, they're going to go somewhere else, and they have lots of options. They maybe do 12 different filters. I want a place with laundry, and it's 2-bedroom, and it's under 3,200. And so they might see yours, but they might look at a bunch of different other offerings. In a smaller area, let's take Squamish, there's just fewer options out there. And so you're going to have a lot higher conversion rate. So it's not always fair to compare apples to apples. In two different regions. So if you have two properties in two different regions and you say, oh, why do we have a lower conversion rate? It's like that could be normal. And the other thing to keep in mind is, again, you're not trying to optimize for conversion rate. Sometimes you say, I'm okay with a lower conversion rate if it means that I am getting 20% more on this unit. If you're really trying to optimize your rent roll, like it can be okay moving from a 9% conversion rate to an 8% conversion rate. That could be a well worth trade-off. The point is not that this is, as anything, this is another piece of data that can help you better understand your pricing strategy and help be a part of that feedback loop to say, hey, is our price, how is the market seeing our price, and how is it seeing the value that we're offering, and are they in line or are they not? And you can use that constantly to tell how things are changing. And that's really how I'd like to see is how it changes over time. If you constantly have a 9% conversion rate and then it goes to 12, does that mean, you know what, rents went up? Maybe we can afford to increase rents a little bit because we're now seeing a higher conversion rate. That's really another part of how it goes into your pricing strategy. So I'm really excited about this. It's coming soon. So that should be, that's another interesting data point. The other big trend that we're seeing on the listing sites is that we are trying to really add a lot more features and functions into the listing site. So that's the first point of contact for most users. Again, going back to it, 15% of search, traffic went to your own sites. The other 85% went to listing sites and classifieds. And so this is for most users. The very first step is Google. And the very next step after that, basically the first point of contact with your actual property is on a listing site, most likely. And so historically, it's basically been, I think Max even mentioned this, it's basically been just the top of the funnel. It's been a lead. Well, we're trying to then close that gap and add more and more features earlier in, because if you're adding too many features later down the funnel, you end up getting churn. People maybe fall out of the funnel. We sent them an email to book a tour 3 days later. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they've already found a different place, whatever it is. So adding more and more of the features such as rental applications, booking, credit checks, online payments, and lease signings, more and more of these features are going to be built into the listing site at the point of contact. And actually, my colleague Sue is going to have a really interesting talk about some of those later ones, especially. So Floor Plan Navigator, that's actually going to be integrated into many of the listing sites moving forward. So it'll be right on the site, and it'll make it that much easier for users, again, to feel like they're in the building. They can really visualize themselves. Which property which unit do I want? What floor do I want to live in? This will also think will help the conversion rate, because users are then not asking questions such as, submitting a lead and saying, hey, what does the balcony look like? Is there any units on the 13th floor? Instead of them asking all these questions, going back and forth with you, they can see it, they can visualize it, they can feel it. And so you're likely to increase your conversion rate and again, reduce the churn. Another one is seamless booking integration. So people, if you have the Rentsync booking widget, you'll be able to then integrate that into the listing sites, and users will be able to book a tour right from the listing site. Again, another one where I have a basement unit rental on my own place in Toronto, and I can tell you how many people I said, hey, book a tour, and it took 6 or 7 times for them to follow up. I know people are busy, but it's like, you said you wanted this desperately, like what is happening? So getting that right there and having them to commit right on the spot to booking a tour really will increase the rate of booking. So another one that I'm really excited about, and should help improve conversions. And another one is improved lead quality scoring. So currently on the Rentals.ca Infinity network, we have the ability to score leads based on how likely they are to convert, how high quality they are. With the advancements of AI, we've been able to add more ability to score users on different features. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to continue to improve this. And beyond that, I think that more and more of the funnel is going to be pre-qualifying users before they get further down the funnel. So right now it kind of goes, you submit a lead, then you try and book them, then you try and talk to them, and then you're trying to figure out, are they actually a good fit? More and more that's going to happen at the front. Not to get too deep into it, but we're talking about more renter profiles, giving the users the ability to fill out more information about themselves at the very beginning. And by understanding who they are, where they live, what job they are, all the renter information at the very beginning, we can then help give you that information also at the front. And that can help you optimize your leasing process. So we're really excited about that and just having a better and better idea of the quality of the users as they come in. So that's exciting. The last trend I want to talk about is I really do think there's going to be continued market shift from classifieds to listing sites. So I just talked about a number of awesome features that we're adding to the listing sites, especially the Rentals.ca Infinity network. Those are going to make it better for users, better for clients. And just classifieds aren't investing in the sites the same way. And so because of that, I'm a big believer in like the better mousetrap wins. If you have a better product, users are going to continue to shift away from classifieds and towards sites with better design and more features that they want. So those are some of the trends. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay.